The shock of the 2024 NFL Draft.
The Atlanta Falcons have selected Michael Penix Jr.
Michael Penix Jr.
What? Michael Penix Jr.
The Falcons taking Michael Penix Jr. at 8. Penix was expected to be a late first rounder at best, and certainly wasn't supposed to go before J.J. McCarthy, but you never know with the draft. Penix is coming off of an incredible 2-year stretch at Washington playing for Kalen DeBoer. Last season, Penix passed for 4,900 yards, the most in the NCAA, 36 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, and rushed for 3 touchdowns. He finished second in Heisman voting behind Jaden Daniels and led the Huskies to an undefeated regular season and to the national championship, where they did lose to Michigan. Penix was fantastic and was in 2022 too. The Huskies were good, and Penix threw for 4,600 yards and 31 touchdowns to 8 interceptions with 4 rushing touchdowns. There's no doubt he showed the tools to be an NFL quarterback while in Seattle. The concerns with Penix date back to his time in Bloomington. For one, Penix played 4 seasons at Indiana, so he was in college for 6 years and is going to be a 24-year-old rookie. He and Zach Wilson, who just got traded after his 3rd season in the NFL, are less than a year apart. Age is a factor, and injuries are too. He tore his ACL as a true freshman, dislocated his shoulder in 2019, tore his ACL again in 2020, and separated the AC joint in his shoulder in 2021. 4 seasons in Indiana and 4 big injuries. He started in 17 total games for the Hoosiers, throwing for 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, and rushing for 6 touchdowns. He decided to transfer to Washington to play for DeBoer, his offensive coordinator at IU in 2019, and the rest is history. He had a good 2 seasons, and it was enough for the Falcons to want him 8th overall, even though they paid a veteran QB a lot of money this offseason. I don't quite understand what the Falcons are doing here. You don't pay a quarterback a ton of money and then turn around and draft one high too. It just doesn't make sense. A month ago, the Falcons signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year, $180 million contract. There is an out after 2026, and the Falcons might be better off moving on before the end of the deal. Kirk is an insane $90 million cap hit this year and $65 million next year, but then it goes down to $25 million in 2026, and he has a $10 million roster bonus. It wouldn't be much of a surprise if Kirk didn't finish out his full 4-year deal. He's going to be a 36-year-old entering the first season of a 4-year deal, coming off of a torn Achilles. He only played in 8 games, passing for 2,300 yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Kirk was on his way to a potential career year. He's been consistent. He's thrown for 20+ touchdowns in 8 straight seasons before that 2023 injury. Kirk was good for 6 years in Minnesota. He spent 6 years in Washington before that, where I watched him a ton, but he's only won a single playoff game in his career. Kirk Cousins has consistently been a good NFL quarterback, but not necessarily elite. The Falcons took their chance on him and gave him a ton of money. The question now becomes just how long he's actually going to start in Atlanta with a 24-year-old rookie coming in. But this wasn't a move Kirk saw coming. Diana Rossini reported that the Falcons called Kirk when they were on the clock to let him know. He knew Atlanta could draft a quarterback, but he didn't think it would be in the first round and is apparently a bit stunned. You don't see teams take a quarterback at the draft with a good vet on the roster, but this isn't the first time, and it's worked before, even if it was a little different. Head coach Raheem Morris said that the Green Bay model is something the Falcons had talked about. The Packers drafted Jordan Love at 26 in the 2020 NFL draft. They still had Aaron Rodgers, who is a surefire Hall of Famer once he retires. It's not like Rodgers was declining yet. He had just thrown for 4,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. Aaron Rodgers was still Aaron Rodgers, and he turned around and won back-to-back MVPs after Love was drafted. Jordan Love sat behind Rodgers for 3 years and got his shot last season. He was good, passing for 4,200 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. Love looks every bit like the future in Green Bay, and the Packers did pretty much the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. He was drafted at 24 in the 2005 NFL Draft and sat behind Hall of Famer Brett Favre for 3 seasons before he got to start. The Green Bay model has worked twice for the Packers this century, but the Falcons situation just feels different. Atlanta hasn't been making the postseason every year or is a contender. Kirk Cousins is brand new to Atlanta, whereas Rodgers and Favre were the guy at the time. Love and Rodgers were also drafted at a younger age than Penix. At least the Falcons did tell Cousins they were drafting Penix before the pick. The Packers didn't tell Rodgers or Favre when they drafted their eventual replacement. I get it. The Green Bay model works. It's 2 for 2 now, but what the Falcons are doing just feels different and a little reckless. But at the very least, the Falcons do have a good offense that can help him develop, whenever that may be. Michael Penix is the 4th straight Falcons first-round pick used on an offensive player and the 3rd consecutive at 8th overall. Last year, Atlanta took Bijan Robinson. He rushed for almost 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns on 214 carries and caught 58 passes for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. In 2022, Atlanta drafted Drake London. He's had back-to-back similar seasons in the pros, around 70 interceptions and 900 yards with a few touchdowns. He's a guy that you would like to see make a jump, and a consistent passer should help. General Manager Tony Fontenot has been busy this offseason, and wide receiver was clearly a focal point. The Falcons signed Darnell Mooney to a 3-year, $39 million contract. He's coming off of back-to-back disappointing seasons with only about 400 yards each, but he did have over 1,000 yards in 2021. The Falcons also brought in Rondale Moore in a trade where they sent Desmond Ridder to the Cardinals. He's coming off of a career-worst season with only 260 yards and a single touchdown off 29 receptions. He had over 400 yards in each of his first 2 years in the league before that, though. Then there's Kyle Pitts at tight end, who went 4th overall in 2021 and had over 1,000 yards as a rookie, but hasn't hit the mark since. He's coming off of 53 catches for almost 700 yards and a career-high 3 touchdowns. There are some serious weapons on the Falcons offense and a good offensive line to create holes and give a quarterback space, whether it's Penix or Cousins. All 5 starters from last season return on the line. Atlanta has done a great job drafting and using capital to build their O-line. 3 guys were first-round picks: left tackle Jake Matthews, right guard Chris Lindstrom, and right tackle Caleb McGarry. The Falcons took left guard Matthew Bergeron in the 2nd round last year, and center Drew Dahlman is a 2021 4th. Atlanta has a talented offense. It just needs to actually use the players correctly, and that's up to offensive coordinator Zach Robinson. He'd coached under Sean McVay with the Rams since 2019 and was their passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach last year. The reality is the Falcons are set up for their young quarterback to succeed. I think they have the right pieces, and Penix is an odd pick for now, but he could work out. Remember, the Falcons have been pretty good at drafting quarterbacks in the 1st round. Since 2001, the Falcons have had a first-round quarterback they drafted start in 20 of 23 seasons. They didn't have one start in the past 2 years or in 2007 when Michael Vick went to prison. Atlanta took him 1st overall in 2001 out of Virginia Tech. Let's go Hokies. He transformed the NFL, becoming the first QB to rush for over 1,000 yards in a season and has an NFL record 6,109 career rushing yards. He made the Pro Bowl 3 times in 6 years in Atlanta before he went to prison and was suspended indefinitely before making an eventual return to the league. The other Falcons first-round quarterback this century is the greatest quarterback in franchise history, Matt Ryan, a 2008 3rd overall pick. He won an MVP in 2016 and helped the Falcons to a Super Bowl appearance. Ryan was a 4-time Pro Bowler and had a stretch of 10 straight 4,000-yard passing seasons. Safe to say the Falcons have hit on first-round quarterbacks in recent memory, but will that trend continue with Michael Penix?